So I'm just going to do a little update. He's trotting before I ask. I'm just going to do an update on how things are going with Rafalko. We have been working on walk-trot transitions, mostly trying to improve the trot, on a bigger circle, as big as possible, on the long reins. Really? Right at the camera? Okay. So I've got just enough outside rein that I have a little bit of play with the support on the hindquarters. The inside rein staying straight. And then what we've been doing is, instead of having a walk warm-up, we just sort of play with walk and trot the whole 20 minutes. We go back and forth. So he can trot as long as he wants. He can break to the walk. And that little give on the left front leg, on the right front leg, usually happens when they're adjusting muscle tone. So he's offering to go back into the trot before I ask. He's been really enjoying the walk-trot work, and where I used to have to give him almost a full lap in between each trot, he's much faster at sort of regaining his stability when he breaks from the trot, comes back into the walk. So now, instead of needing a full circle or even a half a circle, he really just kind of needs a few strides of walk in between the trot. So when he starts to lose his balance at the trot, as long as it's comfortable, you can see he offers me quite a bit of trot. And whatever he does with his posture, his balance, his speed, his tempo, all of that's up to him. And he can break back into the walk whenever he needs to, give him a few steps, and then back into the trot. And I have to be careful with the whip with him, because sometimes he thinks that means I want canter. And if he canters, that's fine. I just am still kind of focusing on his balance at the trot. And I get a lot of this where he slows down the trot, goes into long and low, and if he's heavy on the inside rein in long and low, then I know he's fallen forward, the weight's on the front legs. But sometimes he has his nose in the dirt and he's not really heavy on the inside rein, which tells me even though he's in long and low, that he's starting to get the hang of resisting his own body weight by using his hindquarters and back. Right? So we'll give him, I forgot to look at my watch. We're just going to play with this about 20 minutes, just so you can see how he explores the trot, how he explores his balance. And it's just practice time, kind of like playing the scales on the piano. Right? He needs time and repetition between walk and trot to get a little better at both. And I don't use the snaffle bit on this particular horse. We still do all of our work in the halter, because it seems when he's got pressure on his low jaw, not so much when I'm riding because I can be on a very loose rein, but when I have to actively use the reins, the bit seems to trigger him to over-curl his neck and go back into sort of a horrible habit in his body that we've really most of the way worked through. But when I first am trying to develop trot or develop canter, because the bit causes him to over-curl his neck so badly, we just do all of our initial work in the halter until he starts to get a little better. And we've played with the canter a little, but not a huge amount, just little bits here and there. And you can see as he kind of fell forward and lost his hind legs, coming down to the walk just helps him rebalance, restabilize, kind of get his bearings, and then we can always go back into trot. And whether I give him a few laps of walk in between each trot or just a few strides of trot, doesn't really matter. If they can stabilize within a few strides and go back into trot, whoop, that would be some of the spontaneous chiropractic changes that happen. So that stumble could have been a change in his shoulders. He could have just tripped. I'm not sure what, but this is why we take our time developing the trot. As he's changing his coordination, things like that happen. And it's not always safe to ride when you're just in the beginning stages of changing coordination at the faster speeds. But he's not lame from that, didn't seem to bother him too much, so we're just going to continue. And if it had to do with the footing, he might be a little more careful in that area, a little bit slower, but I don't think that was any big deal. Good. So he's almost volunteering the trot after just a few strides of walk. And what he did before was, even if he needed a lap or more than a lap to sort of re-stabilize his balance at the walk, as soon as he felt lighter in my hand and he felt more stable in his body, he always kind of offered to trot once he felt ready. So he's a very honest horse. Like, he's not trying to get out of trotting. It's just when he loses his stability, it's easier for him to regain that balance and stability at the walk, and then he's ready to try it again. And I don't think I really need to carry the whip, but some of his days working on trot, he's been kind of quite lethargic. So I have it here in case, a little bit like I did with Hercules. If I need to give him a half push, if he's kind of not finding his balance at the trot and not showing the energy kind of slowly increasing, like the rhythm staying the same or even getting a bit quicker, a little more animated, then I can always help him out with a half push. Oh, and the canter was voluntary. Like I said, canter is going to take a while to get good at, so I've really just focused on walk and trot. That's where he seems very comfortable, very reasonable. And if the trot starts to go downhill, if it's not improving session by session, then I might need to start playing with the canter a little bit, or change my strategy. Play with smaller circles, bigger circles, maybe lunging instead of long reins. There's all kinds of ways I can change my strategy. But so far, this strategy with him has just shown slow but steady improvements in both the walk and the trot. And he was one that had to start on very, very small circles for a long time because he really could not control his own body weight. Everything just landslided forward, and he used to go faster and faster. It took a while for him to figure out it was okay to go slower if he felt unstable, because his answer to feeling unstable was to go faster and faster and faster. So now he's realized a downward transition does the job. It's actually easier than going faster and faster. And he has all the room he needs, all the latitude he needs to not have to trot in an uncomfortable or dysfunctional way. So while I'm helping him kind of maintain his weight distribution more equally left to right, the transitions are working on his front to back balance. So combining the left to right support while he plays with walk, trot, walk, trot, walk, trot over and over again on a circle, that's the process of how they start to discover better and better coordination. Good, so we're about halfway into it. Oh, and he's really offering to play with the canter. So it's helping him in some way. And even that one stride right? Just one stride of canter. The transition is where all the extra work is done related to both the braking use of their body and the pushing use of their body. So all the gold nuggets for balance are in the transitions, not in maintaining the gait. So that one stride of canter he's figuring out is a little bit helpful for him. And now he's just kind of choosing walk, trot, on his own time. If he doesn't offer the trot, I'll give him a few strides, maybe lift the whip. But he's pretty much offering, which means he's enjoying working on it. He's feeling some benefit by practicing walk and trot with the long rein support. And in the hotter weather, I have to allow a little bit more walking time because they'll start flaring their nostrils, they'll get a little heat stressed. So while the weather is still cool, I'm glad to see him trotting as much as he is and not going lame by playing with the faster speeds. Even the trot to the left, which was kind of the last, if he showed any lameness, it was going to be going left. Even that has cleaned up, and tracking left looks pretty much like he looks now tracking right. Not super, but a work in progress. And even if I use the whip, if he's not ready, he takes a minute to get into the trot, which is fine. That's just him telling me I'm not quite there yet. Whoop, there's another clunk. So things are changing around his shoulders today. Those little sudden bends of the legs, and sometimes they can trip. I call it a shoulder clunk, and I don't know why, but as the back and hindquarter become more stable, I do know that the muscles all through the thoracic sling that support the front legs, they don't have to work as hard. So they start releasing patterns of excessive tension, tightness, all of that. If the back and hindquarter are not fulfilling their job of stabilizing the body in motion, then all the muscles around the thoracic sling and the neck and the front legs, they have to fulfill that role or the horse would fall over. And what I started to say is, I don't know why the front legs change so suddenly. I call it a shoulder clunk because it's not unusual for them to kind of feel like they stepped in a hole, or the shoulder just goes clunk and then they're fine again, or the leg bends suddenly and then they're back to normal, or like he did at first, they trip or stumble a little bit. And that doesn't typically happen as the hind legs are changing. It can, like you can get a hind leg dropout or a sudden bending of the hind leg where the joints have been a bit stuck. But it happens a lot with the front legs and the shoulders. So it must be because the front legs are not skeletally attached in a horse. They're just supported in a sling of muscle and soft tissue, the thoracic sling. And so maybe a little change of muscle tone anywhere in that area suddenly adjusts the position or the kinematics of the front legs kind of suddenly and quickly. And then they're done with it. And typically, it can scare some horses. They can actually stumble and fall. So it's something you want to be careful with, especially when they're changing coordination at the trot or the canter. That's when it's going to be a little less safe. But it doesn't seem to create any discomfort or pain. They seem to feel better afterwards, even though they have what looks like a trip or a misstep. It's not a lame step, it's just an adjustment of the muscle tone. Okay, so now we're kind of getting down. Oops. Oh no, I was going to do 20 minutes. Yeah. So we're coming up almost on 15 minutes. He's looking a little tired. Give him a half push. See if that helps his balance. Let him walk a little bit. And it's fair enough to get, oh, there's another little shoulder clunk. So he's definitely having some big muscular changes around the shoulders and the front legs, which happens spontaneously and almost at the same rate that the pelvis and the thoracolumbar spine are increasing stability. The muscles just don't have to work as hard to create stability for the body. So they let go almost at the same rate. And that's what can be a little awkward. Like he's not quite fully stable skeletally, but he's stable enough that the muscles are starting to release excessive tone or tension. And that makes him a little fumbly, a little awkward. Sometimes he's careful, sometimes he's lethargic. And I really refrain from using the whip because I don't know what he needs to do to really figure out better coordination. Only he knows that. No human in the world is going to know exactly what any horse feels or how they go through the process of learning a better coordination. So all we can do is guide, and I try to reserve the half push for when I know that they're really kind of getting stuck, right? Or reserve my corrections for when I see over and over that they're not quite figuring it out. If I'm seeing little glimpses of something better or something that, like the trot getting better, or energy, tempo sort of increasing, decreasing, and changing, then I go, he's working on it, right? I don't need to ask him to be perfect or work harder. This is his process of figuring out how to improve coordination between walk and trot. So how he does that is better determined by him, because he's the one feeling it, than me. So if I see the trot kind of going downhill, more and more lethargic, this next trot I might give him an extra half push. So there's my transition, and I'm going to ask for a little more speed in the trot and see what the result is. Yeah. But I try to keep those only to use as needed. I really want to encourage as much exploration as possible. It's just when he gets a little stuck, I can step in. But what really ruins the trot is if I were pushing him the whole time, because then I'm just taking over his job of forward motion. That's got to be his job first, and then he's got to get good at his job second. So the more I lift the whip and stimulate forward, the less he has to figure that out for himself. And what that does is it sort of turns the horse's brain from finding comfort in the trot into sort of just waiting for the walk or the halt. So instead of getting better at the trot, push, they start to just conserve energy. And in their mind, they're just waiting for you to put the whip down so that they can slow down. So their brain is going slower and slower, not faster and faster. And instead of seeking comfort, they're just sort of, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we done yet? And they're just waiting for the whole thing to be over. So when we overstimulate horses, they can't figure out their balance, right? We're distracting them, we're creating pressure, all of those things. If we stay mostly neutral, especially when the horse is trying and we're seeing changes, even if the changes are not what we ultimately want to see, any changes, too slow or too fast, or like he's throwing in a little canter step now and again, all of those tell me he's working on it. He's doing the best he can with what he knows, and he's working on it, right? If I see him get a little stuck, especially as we get closer to 20 minutes, which we're almost there, and he gets a little tired, I might step in with a few more reminders that more energy might be more comfortable than less energy. Very good. We just got about 2 more minutes. I'm going to give him a little extra push. Oh, and I got the canter. That's fine. But then after the canter, the trot looks not quite as heavy, a little more fluid, right? Then he starts falling forward, and that's exactly what I would hope to see. Rather than seeing a heavy lethargic trot, I'd rather see him choose to break to the walk, because he's lost his balance in the trot. It's done and gone. So how he rebalances, or if he maintains an uncomfortable trot, then I'm practicing a bad trot. I would much rather, when he starts to lose his balance in trot, that he break to the walk, recombobulate, and then try the trot again. And that's how you get the trot better and better with each transition, is by not making horses compensate because you're chasing them around with the whip all the time. Very good. Can we do one more? And that'll be about 20 minutes. And he's a little tired, but he's made some very nice changes. So he's asking to walk a little more. That's fine. Okay, one more trot. That's a little bit better, all on his own, without the extra push from the whip. So I'm pretty happy with that. He falls a bit forward, but he doesn't slow down right away, and then he breaks to walk. That's lovely. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Okay, so I think that's all we need to show for today. Work in progress. I'm starting to see little hints of a much better trot, but it's still going to take him quite a bit of practice, time, repetition, for him to really not only change the coordination of the trot, but also develop the muscular support he needs to hold a much better trot. So part of it is mechanical, part of it is muscle memory or habits, and then there's the physical strength he needs to support that. So 20 minutes is a pretty good amount of time.